Hi everybody. My name is Moises Chuyan. I have the pleasure of moderating this Q&A. Before we get to the Q&A, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to hear it again. If you're going to come up and ask us questions, make sure that they're the best questions you possibly have. There's a very specific reason for that. There's a very specific reason I'm wearing this pin. Without further ado, we're going to get an intro. Anybody here watch Interspace? You can raise the roof higher than that for Teddy from Interspace. Come on out, Teddy. You're a bit of a subject matter expert, aren't you?
Thanks. I'm not sure. I certainly love Star Trek, though. You guys love Star Trek? I hope you're having an amazing Fan Expo 2016. For me and everybody who works at the Space Channel, it's our favorite weekend of the year. And something else that we at Space take great pride in is our history with Star Trek. We run and have run all the series. We've got a new series, Star Trek Discovery, coming out soon. But as somebody who grew up with classic sci-fi, the original series is so close to my heart, and so it is such an honor and pleasure for me to get to introduce your next guest. He is a director, an author, an activist, and an incredible actor, and a pivotal member of our genre community. And of course, he is a major part of a little franchise called Star Trek. Please welcome George Takei!
Oh my! Thank you very much. It's great being here in Canada, where you have the coolest Prime Minister. You are so lucky to have him. He's even on a comic book cover now. How cool is that? And to be here in the year 2016, which is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. And thank you all very much for giving us this gift. Because back in 1916, Jimmy Doohan asked me, what do you think of the prospect for this series? We were just filming the pilot film. And I told him, well, with this series, I smell quality. I smell something that's going to be something that we're going to be very proud of. Because I've seen all the actors now, they're wonderful actors, and the writing is very good, and that means we're going to last one season. Because all the shows that I loved back then were canceled after the first season, and they were all quality shows. And so, we're going to be proud of what we're going to do, but we shouldn't plan for anything more than one season. How wrong I was. Here we are, 50 years later. We've got, 14 feature films now. 4 spin-off series? The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise.
And we have Discovery coming.
And yes, another TV series coming. So 5 children that we've given birth to. We're very proud parents, and we love all of our children. And so we have you to thank for that. And well, especially looking over all this sea of heads. The original fans I can recognize. No hair, or with hair, but pretty white. Thank you, original fans, for giving us this longevity. You're the ones that did it. But what we noticed is that those original fans procreated like tribbles. And now they're bringing their grandchildren to conventions. And something seems to happen in 3 generations. The little kids that they're carrying with them automatically go like this. And they seem to have grown pointy ears. So it is an amazing phenomenon. Thank you for this 50th birthday party that you've given us. And we'll see you at the 100th anniversary of Star Trek. I'll be there. I intend to be there. Thank you all very much, but that means you're going to have to stop procreating some more to have more fans to give us that 100-year experience. And so with that, I hand it back over to you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies.
We are getting people lined up to ask questions. I have a couple for you. Something that we saw on the screen before you came out, one of my favorite parts of Star Trek, is the reason why when people ask me, who is your favorite Star Trek captain, I have a very fast answer, and it's Captain Hikaru Sulu. Seeing an actor of Asian descent commanding a starship in the early 90s was incalculably influential to me. And I've seen a public television documentary that you're featured in about an actor named Jack Sue, a man who was very important to Asian actors coming up when you came up as an actor. He was one of those guys that you could look up to. Is anybody out here familiar with Jack Sue? I feel some people know Jack Sue. Can you tell us a bit about this guy?
Barney Miller, anybody remember him from that? Jack Sue. He has an interesting history. You know, during the Second World War, in Canada as well as in the United States, Japanese Americans and Japanese Canadians were looked on as if we were the enemy. We're Americans and Canadians, and yet we have these faces that look like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor. And we were summarily rounded up with no charges, no trial, no due process, simply because of our ancestry, our face. And we were put into barbed wire prison camps for the duration of the war. And when the war was over, they opened up the gates and said, okay, you're free. But they had impoverished us. They took our homes, our parents' businesses, our freedom, and then they said, we're free. And I remember when the war ended, we went back to Los Angeles from where our family came, and our first home after the imprisonment was on Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles. The hatred was still intense, and Jack Sue, despite that Chinese-sounding name, was Japanese American. His real name was Jack Suzuki, but he couldn't work with the name Suzuki because it's Japanese. And so in order to work, he had to take just the first syllable of his name, Sue, which sounded Chinese, and he was able to work as a stand-up comic in nightclubs. When he got his great opportunity, and that was Rodgers and Hammerstein's Flower Drum Song. It was a Chinese story, and he had a Chinese name, so he was cast in that. But he thought, well, times have changed. It's 10 years after the war. Maybe I can go back to my Japanese name. And so he went up to the producers and said, my name's really Jack Suzuki, and I'd like to be billed as Jack Suzuki. They said, sorry, no can do, because our two leading ladies are Japanese Americans. Miyoshi Ueki, who had won an Oscar for Sayonara, the Marlon Brando movie, and the other leading lady was Pat Suzuki, the very same last name. We have two Japanese females playing the leads. And so you're going to have to remain Jack Sue. And so he had to stay with that first syllable of his Japanese name. And he became famous as a result of that. And then he was cast in other films. And I had the opportunity to work with him in John Wayne's Green Berets.
The only movie where the sun sets in the east.
What?
The only movie where the sun sets in the east.
Yes.
Because of the way that they filmed it.
That's right. There's at the end, there's a scene where John Wayne walks into the sunset with a little Vietnamese boy. And the sun was setting there. Vietnam faces the Pacific. The sun sets on the mountain range. But in the Green Berets, it's set on the ocean horizon. So a little fault there, and this eagle-eyed, 4 eyes here, caught that. But I worked with Jack Sue in that, he was a real nice guy. He was much older than me, but he had gone through the internment as an adult. I was a 5-year-old child, so I had a different kind of perspective on it. And so he really had to struggle. But he landed a regular role on the series called Barney Miller, and he became very popular with that. Everybody knew him. But those that experienced the internment as an adult had suffered enormously, and most Japanese American men had a very short life, a premature death, and we lost Jack when he was much too young to be going, in his early 60s. And I lost my father in his mid-70s. So it was a very difficult time that Jack Sue had as an Asian American actor. And I'm so grateful that I'm about 10 years his junior, and I've been able to have a career without as intense a struggle. It has been a struggle, but not like Jack Sue's. And certainly Star Trek has been a fantastic launching pad for me.
I think everyone out here would agree with me that you have more than capably carried the torch for one of your heroes, and we thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much for that.
And I'm your dad and your dad.
I should return the compliment. You have high standards, very good taste, you're very intelligent.
You bring up the internment, and I have to bring up one of my favorite bits of your recent work, the Broadway musical Allegiance. Which you were in with.
Some of you saw it. Thank you very much.
It's a
Long Legacy Project.
A wonderful, wonderful cast, beautiful music, an extremely moving message. How did Allegiance come to you? How did this musical about Japanese internment come into being?
Not Japanese internment, because Japan had
Japanese American.
Japanese American or Japanese Canadian, because the same thing happened here in Canada as well. Your question was,
how did it come to pass? How did this fall in your lap, as it were?
Allegiance.
The whole project.
Well, I'm one of the last generation of Japanese Americans or Japanese Canadians that can talk about the internment personally. I experienced it, but I experienced it as a child, and it's always been my mission in life to make sure that the story is not forgotten, that it would not fade away when us who experience it are gone. Thank you very much. So I've been going on speaking tours throughout not only the US, but in Canada and also in England. I'll be speaking at the Oxford Union at Oxford University in 2 weeks. And this spring I spoke at Cambridge. And so that's been my mission. We founded a museum called the Japanese American National Museum, where we institutionalized that story. But I'm an actor, and I'm a passionate lover of the theater, and it's always been my dream to dramatize it. And ideally as a musical, because a musical commands a larger audience, I met a composer-lyricist in, of all places, Broadway theater. And so we decided to collaborate together, and that's how Allegiance came about. We met at a performance of In the Heights.
Lin-Manuel Miranda is precursor to Hamilton.
He's a guy that is now storied as the star and writer and all-around Renaissance man of Hamilton, the big Broadway hit. But his first Broadway musical, In the Heights, is about the Puerto Rican community in New York, and that was a big hit too. And so Brad and I went to see that, and in the same role was J. Cole, a very gifted composer-lyricist, and that's where the story started. We started sharing ideas, and from that came Allegiance.
Well, your magnificent voice is well known. We got to know it in a different context entirely in Allegiance.
My voice is getting very hoarse now. I've been talking to all the fans all morning long.
Should we bring you some water?
I have it right here.
Now, speaking of your voice, one of my favorite things that you've done in your career is an extensive amount of voice acting. You've done commercials, you've done cartoons, you're very memorable in Mulan, for me in particular. Getting into the world of voiceover acting, what are you using different muscles, different skills for that than when you're on screen?
Well, it's the voice that's primarily, but you certainly use your imagination. I started my career, as a matter of fact, my very first gig was dubbing in the English dialogue to a Japanese science fiction film called Rodan.
Anybody heard of Rodan? People at a comic convention know what Rodan is?
You are sci-fi fans if you know Rodan, because that was more than 50 years ago. I won't tell you, it was something like 62 or 3 years
Oh,
ago.
the math doesn't matter.
I've been in this business a long, long time. And there, it's also understanding timing, because we're dubbing in English to actors that are speaking in Japanese. And so there are two different languages. And so you got to find where you want to breathe, or where you want to go fast or slow down so that you fit the actor's lip movements. And it's a real skill. I work with professionals that have been working at it for a long, long time, and I learned a great deal from people like Joe Fries and Key Luke on that gig. So it's learning and paying attention, getting a sense of rhythm, and knowing how to coordinate that with your voice.
I should also promote the thing that you have in theaters right now that you did voice work with. Both you and Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa are in Kubo and the Two Strings.
Many of you have seen it. Isn't it a beautiful film? And it's stop action, so it's very time consuming and tedious. They tell an epic story of medieval Japan. In fact, it's a mystical story, and they do it with stop action puppetry. And it is fantastically, breathtakingly gorgeous. I mean, it begins with a storm scene, and how they do that with waves coming up and engulfing the ship is absolutely amazing. Cinematic magic. I recommend it highly to those of you who have yet to see Kubo. It's a real treat.
Now, George, we're going to turn it over to audience questions. Pay close attention. Let me know if one of these in particular turns out to be really good. There's a reason I'm asking. There's a reason I'm asking. So let me know who does a particularly good job.
Well, the reason why he's teasing you like that is, and think hard about the question you asked, because the person who I deem to have asked the best question, whatever the best question might be in my mind, gets a very special gift. I won't tell you anything more than that.
We'll spoil the surprise at the end.
All right.
Let's go right ahead.
Hi, George. Mark from Montreal.
There you are.
Here I am.
Yeah, come further up. Come further up.
Yeah,
Let me
because
see.
I want to see who's asking the question, and with these two lights glaring in our faces, there you are.
How many fingers?
Yes.
Okay.
Your shirt says, "Damn it, Jim."
Mark from Montreal. I have a question. What do you think would be the episode while you're in the Enterprise, flying by, near Krypton, then all the little capsules passing by with Superman inside, then automatically you would beam up the capsule into the Enterprise, and then Superman would be on board. What about that one?
How would he
What would
react
you
to
think about that
Superman
episode?
suddenly beaming on board of the
Yeah,
Enterprise?
while it's passing
It's
by.
a very imaginative idea to combine Superman and different characters from a different world with the world of Star Trek in the 23rd century. I think, we always talked about imagination and creating the unthinkable eventually as reality. But in that case, it's not the unthinkable because you thought of it, but it's the legally doable. Because Star Trek is owned by Paramount and CBS, And Superman is owned by some other corporation, I don't know who, Marvel Comics.
Warner Brothers, DC.
Warner DC.
He keeps up with Paramount.
So you can have a whole battalion of lawyers, and I don't think that will be worked out.
It would be pretty interesting.
It would be interesting. In fact, the working out in itself may be a whole movie story in itself.
And then it would say like, damn it, Jim, look what we got on board.
That's Scotty's line. No, that's McCoy's line. Yeah. And he would not like Superman. he knows, at least he's finally gotten to understand the Vulcan anatomy. Green-blooded, pointy-eared, Vulcan. He got to understand that. Superman has a whole different anatomy and a system there. What color is Superman's blood? Has he ever bled? He is red? Red-blooded. That's right, he's a red-blooded American, right? Lois Lane. He's Canadian.
Well, he was created by Canadians.
No, he flew by Canada.
Yeah, one of his creators was Canadian.
But Canadians can. My aunt was a Japanese American, but she married, would you believe, a Canadian. What luck! And she became a Canadian. And I have Canadian cousins. And my aunt lives in Don Mills, right here in Toronto.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Takei. Pleasure and honor to address you. My question is, and I asked it to all the subjects I can get the chance to talk to. When it comes to your character Sulu, is there any aspect or backstory or just something you came up with yourself that ultimately, just through the creative process or the higher-ups, just ultimately never made it into the character, into the show, but it's something that you, as the person who played the character, always kind of thought was, this is always going to be the character's thing, but we just never got to see it?
Well, you put it in a negative way, but I want to tell you about when I did get one of my ideas into the show. Naked Time, that episode that's my favorite, originally had Sulu brandishing a samurai sword. This was told to me about a month before we actually shot that by the writer of John D.F. Black. In between shots, we were all sitting on canvas chairs like this, and he plunked himself down beside me and he said, we're working on the script where you lose all your inhibition by this virus that attacks you through the palm of your hand. And we're thinking of putting a samurai sword in his hands. What do you think of that? And I said, well, I'm of Japanese ancestry, and so it's culturally and ethnically consistent. But when I was a kid, I didn't play samurai. And I told him, one of the things I loved playing was, my parents took me to see Errol Flynn in The Adventures of Robin Hood. And I was swept away by that. And when we came home, I had my mother make me a Robin Hood outfit. My backyard had a great big tree that was easy to climb. And my backyard became Sherwood Forest. And I gathered my neighborhood kids of my friends to play Robin Hood. And I remember Gary McGarry was a skinny, taller than me, blonde kid. But it was my backyard and my mother made the costumes, so he played Friar Tuck. He was short, fat, and tubby. But he was my Friar Tuck because he was my best friend. And Martha Gonzalez, halfway down the block, became my maid Marian. So I told John that I used to play Robin Hood, and I used to fence. And he said, oh, that's interesting. And I said, well, you know, it's not culturally consistent, but this is science fiction. It's the 23rd century. And Sulu would certainly see himself, his heritage, as the heritage of the world. And so why not put a fencing foil in his hands? And he said, yeah, that's an interesting idea. Do you fence? I told him, it's my favorite sport. And then that Saturday, I had the yellow pages. Anybody here know what the yellow pages is?
This was a 20th century technology, yes?
Exactly. I was looking up fencing lessons. And I found one on Sunset Boulevard, not too far from where I lived. And I took my first lesson, my formal fencing lesson, about a month before we actually shot that. And the exciting thing about that was the instructor that I got was a Mr. Faulkner, who told me that he choreographed the fencing scenes in The Adventures of Robin Hood. And he doubled for Basil Rathbone in Errol Flynn's close-ups, because he told me that Errol Flynn was terrified of Basil Rathbone's fencing, because he was so totally uncontrolled. And he wanted to have Mr. Faulkner fencing with him for the close-ups. And so, as someone that I admired as a kid, I was actually watching it in the backside with him, my fencing instructor, in those close-ups that Errol Flynn did. So, Naked Time gave me that wonderful gift of meeting the man who choreographed that, and who doubled for Basil Rathbone.
Thank you very much.
It's amazing how things come full circle in a career. It's amazing how things come full circle in a career. You know, things that you're a fan of as a kid that end up coming back, and they're part of the work that you do. Next question.
Hello, I am Thomas from Angus.
Hi, Angus.
Okay.
I like your beat.
Me too. Now I've been watching Star Trek since I was old enough to be my parents' remote control. But when I was that
You've grown
young,
up well.
I've grown out well.
You have indeed.
But I was never able
Lots
to.
of beat there.
Oh mine.
Mine too.
Now I wasn't able to appreciate the breakthroughs and the barriers broken by Gene Roddenberry and the likes of my heroes as a kid until I became an adult. And I got a greater appreciation of what you did with Michelle and Everyone Dead. Now, my question is about your personal life and your efforts with the LGBT community, or however number of
A
letters.
lot of letters there.
I actually want to start a movement to change it from A to Z. Do you think your personal life had an impact in the way they portrayed Sulu in the reboot? In the last movie, Star Trek Beyond, you see Sulu there with his partner and his small son. Did you have an influence to make that possible so that Gene Roddenberry's legacy could break one more barrier in the Star Trek universe?
I tried to make an impact, and I had no influence on that. Let me tell you a little story about that. About 2 years before, or maybe a year and a half before the movie came out, I got a call from John Cho, who's the new Sulu, and he said, they're talking about honoring you, George Takei, because of all your advocacy for LGBT equality, of making Sulu gay. And what do you think about that? And I said, well, the movie's going to be coming out on the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. I'm very flattered that they want to honor me, but they really should be honoring Gene Roddenberry, who created the show. It was his vision, his philosophy, his ability to pound on some of those mahogany desks and persuade and cajole and sometimes bully those network executives into buying that idea of Star Trek. It's him that should be honored. It's not about me. It's about Gene Roddenberry on the 50th anniversary. And I told Gene Roddenberry created all of the characters in the original series as straight characters because of the times. Because back in the 60s, you know, there were various equality movements going on. The civil rights movement, or the peace movement, or the Cold War, a lot of other struggles. But the gay equality, gay liberation movement was just beginning. I mean, Stonewall, the bar that got raided in Greenwich Village, happened in 1969 after Star Trek was canceled. And so it was an idea that was not shared by the majority of the populace. And if Gene told me, I'm treading a very tight tightrope by dealing with the issues that I'm dealing with. If I step too far, the show may be canceled, and I wouldn't be able to make any commentary about any of the social issues. And he cited for me the example of where white Captain Kirk kisses black Uhura. That was so controversial then, a black-white kiss. It was so controversial that the stations in the South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, didn't air it. They banned the episode. And that particular episode hit rock bottom in the ratings. And so he said, I can't afford to deal with that issue of equality for the LGBT people. And so I told him that Gene was very venturesome, and he really supported the idea of LGBT equality, but he couldn't because he had to keep the show on the air. And that's why we need to honor Gene Roddenberry as he created the character. I said, I'm delighted that times have changed, and now we can talk about an LGBT or gay character and think of making Sulu gay. I'm very flattered and honored, but we need to honor Gene Roddenberry by creating a new character who has his own history and his own struggles in the 23rd century and focusing on that, but not to change the character that Gene Roddenberry created. And so I lobbied for him to stay straight and for them to create a new character, which is what I understand is happening with the new TV series. So, you know, that's what I lobbied for, and I made no impact at all. You saw what, and I thought they were going to do something significant, but if you saw the movie, it's just a whisper. I mean, what was that happened, you know?
They're male roommates whispering to one another.
There's a little baby there, a little girl there.
Yeah, oh, I guess one of them adopted a child or something.
But it's so brief and so passing that, you know, and that might be the right approach to it, because in the 23rd century, that would be as normal as a woman waiting for him and with a baby and going off together. So that's all right. But if you really wanted to honor Gene Roddenberry, it should be with a brand new character, with his own history, not to change a character that Gene Roddenberry created.
Well, I love your input, and thank you for answering. I just have one tiny little question. Now, I know Desi Blue Studios helped Star Trek get off the ground. Did you get to meet Lucille Ball? That was my only question.
I have.
Awesome.
She's a tough-looking lady when she's a studio head.
There's someone in full costume. That's nice.
Good afternoon. I have about 5 reasons why I'm on social media, and I have to say that you and Brad are number one. You're the only reason.
Can we get a round of applause for Brad today?
You're on board with me here.
Brad's somewhere here.
Oh, he's hiding. Brad doesn't want to come out. Brad doesn't want to be the center of attention. Oh, there he is. Come on stage, Brad. Come here, come here. Come up here, come up here. Get over here. You hate me for this probably, but get on stage.
Hello everybody, great to be here. George is going to be signing autographs after the talk this afternoon.
That was a commercial break.
Always about business.
My question then for you is, obviously, the Japanese, American, and Canadian term was an issue you wanted to address, you wanted awareness. LGBTQ2S pi is obviously another advocacy issue that you've been addressing, but was there anything else that got you started? Because now you're a social media guru. You, for a man of your generation, are a legend in social media. So what got that ball rolling?
Well, he just whispered to me, this is the last question. So you're the third one. I'm sorry I'm giving you long-winded answers, but the questions have been so good, that the questions that required a detailed answer, forgive me. I see all these other people in line. And I forgot what your question was.
Aside from the Japanese internment and
Japanese American.
Japanese American,
Japanese Canadian.
and
She got it right.
The Japanese
She got it right the
internment,
first time, and
yeah.
then I threw it off.
Aside from that and other advocacy issues, what got the ball rolling with you and Brad on social media?
Well, there are all, I've been involved in advocacy from before Star Trek because of our internment. When I was a teenager, I wanted to, I read civics books and history books about the shining ideals of our democracy, and I couldn't reconcile that with what I knew to be our childhood imprisonment. And so I had many discussions with my father, and he said, our democracy is a people's democracy. And it can be as great as a people can be, but it's also as fallible as people are. And our democracy is vitally dependent on people who cherish those ideals and actively engage in the political process. And one Sunday he took me downtown to the Adlai Stevenson for President campaign headquarters, and he volunteered me, although he said we volunteered. I just went with my father and he said, here you are, this is how democracy works. And I became an advocate and a political activist from way back then. And the big issue that I'm taking on now is gun control, because it's madness. Thank you. Good to know that we have your support.
You have no more captive an audience than a moderator who lives in Texas.
He lives in Texas,
It's terrifying.
where you can carry a hidden gun onto a university campus. And at that, a campus where, about 40 years ago, there was this horrific tragedy of this vet that went a little off kilter, went to the top of a tower, and started randomly shooting other students on campus.
And that's where I live, Austin, Texas.
That's where you live, Austin, Texas. I mean, that is the worst case of lack of rational control over guns. And so we've got to get some rationality into gun control. And particularly now in recent times when we have terrorism that murders masses of people, and people who do that can go out and buy, well, first of all, we have what's called the watch list, where there are questions about what's the background, and so they're not allowed to get on planes, and yet they can go off and buy a gun, an assault gun, a mass assault gun. I mean, this is crazy. It's insane. And yet, their so-called right to do that, to have a lunatic go out and buy a gun without any kind of restraint. We've got to get rationality into that. I've been an advocate from long before Star Trek as a person who, as a child, experienced the unconstitutional deprivation of our freedom and our property and our justice by both the Canadian government and the United States government. So that is something that I guess you asked why I got started on activism. I think it's my childhood imprisonment that got me started.
Thank you very much, George.
I know that you like giving some closing remarks. Have you given some thought to which one of those questions you liked the best?
Well, they were all very, very interesting questions, and that's why I gave, forgive me, a very extended answer.
Oh, but
and
the good
I
news is
apologize
everyone
to
can-
all of you standing in line.
You can all come and see him at his table afterward. He's staying for a little bit longer, so you can get the direct, right there, in-person experience with George.
Yes. But I'm told that I have to choose one.
Just one.
That to me was the most interesting question. Maybe it's... Which one shall I choose? There were only three.
There were only three.
We should have had more questions so that...
They were very good. They were very good. There was the very good one where you got to talk about the interesting roundabout way that Errol Flynn worked into your work. We had that one that we got to talk about your activism work, which is very important to you.
Jack Sue was... that was
That was me. That was me. That was mine. For
you don't count because you're up here.
So I don't know, Errol Flynn or activism. What do you think?
I think the last one, the young lady who asked.
Can you come up here for a second?
Congratulations to you, and my apologies to the other two, the two guys. You asked great questions too, but I think, you're green. You were silhouetted, so I didn't see you as green. This green young lady, dressed very buxomly in a yeoman's outfit, is the one that asked about activism and how I got started. So, congratulations to you. Thank you for the question.
The reason I asked you up here, one of my friends here to the side is going to get your name, hold on, your name, your address, your email address, make sure you give them all three of those, because CBS Home Entertainment told me go to Canada, do George Takei's Q&A, and give away a copy of our 50th anniversary, the original series Blu-ray Deluxe box set. Do you own a Blu-ray player?
I own everything.
So you're well.
However, your address has to be on the planet Earth. Your green planet doesn't count. We don't have postal service up there.
You can't ship it to Orion. What's your name?
It's Mesh.
Mesh? Thank you so much. Let's hear for Mesh.
Congratulations to you. I had no idea that she was green. Well, thank you all very much. It's been a wonderful visit to Toronto, and again, I repeat, Justin Trudeau is fantastic.
Now, George, I have one thing that I want to say to you. You mean so much to so many of us, so many things that you've chosen to take a stand on that you didn't have to. You didn't have to, but you felt the urge to, you felt the mission to, is the greatest honor that you could do the people who came before you, your father, people who you've worked with who've been heroes of yours, and that's why you're a hero of all of us here. Let's hear it for George. George will be back at his table. Please come see him. He's going to be at his table for another hour. Do not miss your chance to see this wonderful man.